Shout with joy to God all the earth.
Sing to the glory of his name.
Offer him glory and praise.
Sing to the glory of his
Sing
name.
to the glory.
Sing to the glory of his
Sing
name.
to the glory.
Sing to the glory of his name.
Mighty men that Brother Dow just read. We're going to focus on a specific one this morning. His name was Uriah the Hittite. The title of my lesson, Uriah the Hittite, an absolute devotion to God. Question, what is it like to be devoted to God? So devoted that even though your life may be crashing down around you, you don't allow it to distract you from your true focus. We all know the story of David and Bathsheba, right? We've heard that story 100 times, but very little is told about Uriah the Hittite, who, let's be honest, is a minor character in that story, but he's a major part of the story of Bathsheba and David. Today, we're going to look closely at Uriah the Hittite and how his devotion stands out to encourage all of us in our faith. Uriah the Hittite, let's start from the beginning. He was not of Israel. He was not from Israel. Not only was he allowed to join Israel, however, he could also marry an Israelite in Bathsheba. And he personally served the king of Israel, King David. He served him as a warrior. How did he join? How in the world could this outsider join Israel? Because I thought Israel could not join other nations. You'd be right. Israel couldn't join other nations, but other nations could join Israel. All they had to do, the males had to be circumcised, and male or female, everyone coming into Israel had to obey the laws and commandments that the Israelites were following. You find all that in Exodus chapter 12, verse 48 through 49. Now, question, if you're joining Israel from the outside, does this mean that you're a lesser Israelite? A second-class citizen of the nation of Israel? Absolutely not. Numbers 15 through 16. The Lord says that they are the same before his eyes, and his eyes are the only ones that count. So according to God, his eyes, Uriah the Hittite was now of Israel. How great a warrior was Uriah the Hittite? I undersold that before. I said he was a warrior, but I didn't tell you how great a warrior Uriah the Hittite actually was. Uriah the Hittite was one of David's mighty men. One of his mighty men. That's what Brother Dahl was reading for us earlier. Mighty men. These were warriors who single-handedly slaughtered hundreds of enemy combatants on their own, by themselves, not over the course of their warrior career, but in one battle. They could slay hundreds of the enemy warriors. We see this sometimes in Hollywood or in some of our later video games. You see and you hear the narrator, one man against so many. And you see this big army, and there's one man, and somehow he shoots his weapon off. It takes out 150 guys, but the same bullet hits the mountainside, which causes a rock slide, takes out another 500. You see all these coincidences happen, but this is real life. These were men who with just their sword in hand took out hundreds of the enemy camp. They were known for their bravery. They were known for their loyalty, especially their loyalty to King David. They were unbeatable because of their fighting spirit. And you'll see the rest of these mighty men in 2 Samuel 23, 8, all the way through 39. So when you get a chance, read those. Don't get hung up on the names. The names are going to be difficult. But look at what they did. Look at who they were. Among these names, these mighty men, was Uriah the Hittite. Now, to give you more of an example of who these mighty men were, does anybody remember David, young David, when he fought Goliath? You'll see that in 1 Samuel 17. It tells us this young David, he was simply delivering food to the armies of Israel that were cowering before the towering Goliath. In this part, you've got young David, who is just a glorified, he's the taco guy. He's just coming to deliver food for the brave armies of Israel. that were scared. They were shaking in their metal boots because this Goliath they were facing down, he was so big and he was bred for their death. He was bred to kill whomever is on the battlefield. After hearing Goliath taunt Israel, though, young David, hearing Goliath taunt Israel and taunt the one true God, we all know what David did, right? David bravely confronted Goliath and killed him with a slingshot, one shot to the head. Imagine that. You are Goliath, 9 feet tall. You're the greatest warrior anyone has ever seen. And you're killed by the taco guy of the opposing army. Not even one of the warriors. David was too small to even wear the armor of what the other Israelite soldiers were wearing. He was too small for that. This guy was an insult, and he killed me? Oh, it's a good thing Goliath did not survive, because he'd have died from embarrassment. So, David, that's who David was. David's confidence was not in his own size. His confidence was not in his strength. His confidence was not in his skill. His confidence was in God. This is the same faith as all of David's mighty men. So imagine young David who killed Goliath and multiply him, and that's David's mighty men. They have an unwavering faith in God that made them unbeatable. And among them, once again, Uriah the Hittite. So in Uriah the Hittite, we have a man who, number one, he loved his God. Loved his God. How do we know this? Number one, you could not join Israel unless you pledged allegiance to the one true God. So this love for God propelled Uriah to become, to be adopted into the nation of God. And he pledged allegiance to the one true God. This love for God propelled him to become one of the mighty men who were considered mighty because of their faith in God. Not the strength of their arms, but because of their faith in God. Number two, Uriah the Hittite loved his king. How do we know this? What greater honor can someone have than to be adopted into the nation of God and to personally serve its anointed king? Remember, David was a man after God's own heart, according to 1 Samuel 13 and 14. How much greater honor could someone have? 3, he loved Israel. He loved his adoptive nation. How do we know? You got to keep this in mind. He's a Hittite. So at some point in the past, Uriah had chosen to renounce his heritage, his Hittite heritage, and pagan customs to join Israel. You don't adopt into a new nation and undergo circumcision, ouch, as an adult, okay, without being passionate about your choice. So to top it all off, Uriah marries an exceedingly beautiful wife. Oh yeah, Bathsheba. Uriah's life is finally on track. I've left everything that I've come from. I've joined the greatest nation on earth. Why? Because they have God as their God. And I've got this amazingly beautiful wife. Things are looking up. Uriah the Hittite is a happy man. So today we're going to take a look at our story passage of 2 Samuel 11, but we're going to focus on Uriah the Hittite and his character and how he demonstrates an absolute devotion to God that King David used to have. In most stories we read about with King David, he's the hero. But in this particular story, King David is the villain. He's the bad guy in this story. 2 Samuel 11, 1 through 5. When we read it, we're going to just look at the summary of it, though. It starts our story. We discover that there's a time, this time, when the kings and their armies went to war. David stayed home, and he sent his commander Joab and the armies of Israel, which included his mighty men, he sent them off to war. Now, while they were away, he sees a woman bathing on the roof whose beauty completely captivates David. Completely captivated him. So he finds out, he sends some men to go find out who is this woman. So he finds out she's Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. You know what he does next? He closes his curtains and he goes back to his studies. And he bows in prayer to God and continues on with his life. And the story ends, right? If only we could go back and rewrite the stories of our lives. Surely David would have chosen a different option, right? Most of us, there's some part in our life we would like to just get that eraser and rewrite it. That's better. That's better. Didn't happen though, right? Didn't happen. After David finds out she's married to one of his own mighty men, what does he do? He summons her, he sends for her, and he sleeps with her. Now, this story's already pretty bad. It's already pretty bad. Now, how many can guess where this story's going to go from here? Can it go up? I always trust that when it comes to mankind, especially within our sin, within our own sinful nature, these stories always get worse. These stories will always get worse. So this story obviously gets worse. So as the story goes downhill, let's look at the next part. 2 Samuel 11, 6 through 10. Again, a summary. David devises a plan. Listen to this secret plan. Oh boy, here we go. Let's get Uriah back home from the battle. He's away at the battle. Let's get Uriah back home so he can sleep with his wife Bathsheba. What this is going to do is it's going to hide the facts. And the baby to come would be presumed to be Uriah's child. Look, Bathsheba's pregnant. Great. Uriah was just here not too long ago. It's to be expected. No problem at all. And it just goes on like day after day. No big deal. But this plan does not work. Why does this plan not work? Because Uriah refused to go home. He refused to go home. Why? Because of his unwavering loyalty and his absolute devotion, which is everything that made Uriah the Hittite one of David's mighty men. You take out his unwavering loyalty and his absolute devotion, he's no longer a mighty man. That's not who he is anymore. Uriah the Hittite is a warrior. Let's explain more about him. He's not just a warrior, he's actually one of the best. His faith in God makes him one of the best, and focusing on the battle and the pride of Israel is priority number one of a warrior from Israel. Has anyone ever had any family in the military? Yes? No? Probably? Yeah, okay. I had have an uncle, he's still around. His name is Samuel DeVore. So growing up, we called him Uncle Sam. He saw action. He was in a war. Don't ask me which one because I forgot. But I remember growing up, he would tell us these stories of him being in the war. Can you imagine my Uncle Sam or your brother or your father or whomever in your family was in the war, in any war? Can you imagine him and their platoon? They're armed to the teeth. They're marching through a jungle. It's in the dark of night, okay? Their hearts are beating. Sweat's coming down. The safeties of the weapons are off, okay? They're marching through a jungle that neither you nor I can find on a map. Every sound they hear, they have to determine if that sound is friend or foe. If it's a foe, they've got to take out the foe. If it's a friend, then they just, okay, he's one of us. Let's keep going on this mission. Now, there were no cell phones back then, but let's put a cell phone back there with my Uncle Sam. He receives a phone call on this mission. Hello, who is it? Hi, honey, it's me. My wife? Yeah, it's your wife. Hey, listen, I'm putting up some new curtains in the living room. I want to know, would you prefer red curtains or blue? Now, as a married man, I'm going to tell you right up, that's a very important choice. Red or blue curtains. Gotcha. But it's not important now, and it's not important here. In Uriah's case, any distraction or any deviation of that focus could mean the death of himself, the death of his fellow warriors, or even Israel itself being conquered. So to get Uriah to relinquish his duty as a warrior during a war, to get him to lose his focus, you'd have to kill him first. How ironic, the way this story plays out. You'd have to kill him first. So this is Uriah's devotion to God and to his adoptive nation. King David's devotion had left God and was centered on his needs, maintaining his image. Because all someone has to do is figure out, wait a minute, Bathsheba's pregnant, her husband's away at war, there's fornication in the camp. There's adultery going on. Who did it? Who did it? There's that game, that who done it. Yes, men, we husbands, we have needs. But when a man is selfish, his needs are his priority. My appetite, my desires, what's best for me, what makes me feel good, etc. We become rabid hedonists who can't function without our satisfaction. So what's David doing? David is counting on Uriah as a warrior to still think like a man, a selfish man, and look forward to this pleasant distraction with his wife. That's what's going on. So let's listen to Uriah the Hittite's response to King David at David's request that Uriah go home to his wife while the war is raging elsewhere. What does he say? 2 Samuel 11, verse 11. Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths." Some of your translations may say tents. "And my lord Jacob and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field." So they didn't even have tents. They might have had a campfire, maybe. "Shall I then go to my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing." It would be as if my Uncle Sam, in his platoon, in the jungle none of us can find on the map, they're all going on with their mission, and he tells his platoon, hey, fellas, you all go on without me. I'm going to go ahead and get in this hot tub and drink a little bit of wine and watch the game. That's not what warriors do. That's not what they do. Uriah's character quality threatens to publicly reveal David's character flaw. As long as Bathsheba was in no immediate danger, Uriah's focus as a warrior was the war and his companions and his commander that all needed him back on the battlefield, right? If they aren't home with their wives and families, neither shall he be. So Uriah's focus was what? The nation of Israel and serving God. King David's focus was the cover-up. I've got to cover my tracks. I've committed adultery and fornication, and I don't want anyone to know because I'm the king of Israel. I am the king. Uriah's loyalty and devotion was in the way of David's scheme to cover a pregnancy he never should have initiated. So here's David's mind. If I can't cover, if I can't hide my fornication from everyone, I will kill him. I will kill Uriah. I will marry his wife, ex-wife now, and then the baby to come, everyone will know this is my child, but it's okay because it's my wife. So Christ is averted in David's mind. So King David ordered the death of Uriah the Hittite, his own loyal servant, one of his own mighty men. We see that in 2 Samuel 11, 14 through 15, and it reads, "In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. In the letter, he wrote, 'Set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting, and then draw back from him that he may be struck down and die.'" So here's Uriah. He's marching back to the battlefield with a note for Joab, his commander, regarding Uriah's own execution. He might as well have had a sign on his back. The sign on his back that said, "Dear enemy, please kill him, love King David." He might as well have had that on his back. As we read the story, we want to reach back in time. We want to reach way, way back in history, and we want to tell Uriah, open the letter. Just open the letter. If you open the letter, Uriah, everything will be revealed. Your life can be spared, right? Your life can be spared, and maybe you can get even with some of these conspirators, including the king. Maybe. But Uriah had complete trust in his king and his commander. This was God's chosen nation, right? Deceit happened in his former nation, but now he's in God's chosen nation. Is there any reason at all for Uriah the Hittite to suspect deceit? No, there's not. There is absolutely no reason. So if Uriah did know the contents of the letter, if he did, if Uriah knew his wife had betrayed him, if he knew his king had betrayed him, how would that have changed the outcome? How would that have changed the outcome? What would that have made different? David is still the God-anointed king of Israel, and because they didn't have elections back then, the only way to take David off the throne would be for God to do it. That's how David got the throne to begin with. Saul was on the throne, and God took him off and installed David. So even if Uriah the Hittite knew everything that's going on, David is still the God-anointed king of Israel. His wife has still betrayed him. How would that have affected him? Sometimes we want to know more details around our lives than we probably should. The details would surely interrupt our absolute devotion to God and change little to nothing about the situation itself. We're going to get angry, yes. We want to get even, yes. And then we become disillusioned about so many things in life. But we question God. And what happens when we question God? Inevitably, it always ends up with the same answer. God is sovereign. He's on the throne. He knows what's going on. He's got a plan, whether we see it or understand it or agree with it or not. He's got a plan. Uriah would have gladly given his life to serve and protect his king and benefit Israel. David gladly took Uriah's life just to have his wife and to keep his own image intact. No benefit to anyone in this story. No benefit to anyone except for King David. So not only did David successfully kill Uriah, but he also killed a bunch of his own men. You take a look at 2 Samuel 11 and verse 17. It reads, "And the men of the city came out and fought with Joab, and some of the servants of David among the people fell. Uriah the Hittite also died." Some of the servants of David among the people fell. Keep that in your head right now. Some of the servants of David. Question, what did these servants of David do wrong? What did they do wrong? They fell in battle as well. These servants of David and David's army, they lost their lives. Now they too can't go home to their wives. They too can't go home to their children. Why? Because of David's greed and his deceit. This is what it looks like when your devotion switches from God to yourself. What follows is pain, death, misery, and destruction. And sometimes others will share in the consequences of your sin, my sin. Whatever joy we receive from sin was always only temporary. But the consequences of our sin can be permanent. Uriah the Hittite died knowing nothing. You ask me, that's a mercy. Because all these things he could have found out about and then to still be killed? Oh, what a sad way to go. What a very sad way to go. Had he opened the letter, maybe he would have asked the same questions that we would, right? What kind of questions would we ask? Where are you, God? Look at what they're doing to me. What have I done to deserve this? What will your justice look like? I want to see it. Oh, should I handle this? I'm one of David's mighty men after all. I can take out hundreds of people on the battlefield by myself. I can handle this too, God. You just give me the word. These are some of the questions that would go through Uriah the Hittite's mind. Uriah the Hittite, he lost everything, but he did not lose his God. He did not lose his God. He served God to his end, even if the end was not what he necessarily had in mind. Uriah would not have chosen this story for his life. He chose not to open the letter because of his loyalty, his devotion, and his faith. Even as Uriah was walking through the valley of the shadow of death, we see that in Psalms 23 and verse 4, God was with him and taking care of the affairs that Uriah knew nothing about. Nothing at all. King David, don't worry, as the story goes, he paid for his transgressions. He paid for his sins against God. He paid for his sins against Uriah the Hittite. But Uriah was not around to see that payment commence. And ultimately, did it really matter whether he saw it or not? No. He was gone to a better place because of his faith in God, his trust in God. God has got this. So here's my question to all of us this morning. What distracts our absolute devotion to God? What are we holding on to that ultimately will not matter? What letters do we want to open that will reveal betrayal, sin, and the depravity of mankind, some of which may be within our own families? What letter do we want to open that will only serve to distract our absolute devotion to God? Someone could be plotting evil against any one of us or all of us right now, right at this minute. So, question, do we want to pursue all evil under heaven and bring it to justice according to our cause? Or would we rather pursue the master and the creator of the whole universe? Pursue him. Do we trust that God is sovereign? Do we trust in God's justice? Do we trust that God has got this? Whether we're aware of what's going on outside or not, do we trust that God has got this? So as we ourselves walk through the valley of the shadow of death, are we focused on the valley that we walk through, or are we focused on God? Are we focused on God to lead us through? As we enter the new year, 2024, cannot believe we are here in 2024. I remember as a kid, most of the science fiction I watched, it actually took place either in 1990 or 2000 or 2010, and we had flying cars and laser guns aplenty. It was a normal thing. But here we are in 2024. Yeah, we're far from that, aren't we? But what obstacles will test our absolute devotion to God in 2024? What will Satan have to throw our way to get us to doubt God and to doubt his sovereignty? Uriah's letter, the letter that we wish he would have opened, was full of betrayal and his own execution. What does your letter say? Let's pretend we're all carrying a letter. What will be in your letter? What bad news can Satan use to distract you and me from our absolute devotion to God? Or can we stand like Uriah? In the heat of battle, can we stand like Uriah and focus on the task at hand, focus on what God wants us to do, and let God handle all the little other things that are going on in our lives? Don't hear what I'm not saying. Do nothing in the face of injustice or harm against ourselves or loved ones? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, in the valley of the shadow of death, we may not see true justice, if any justice at all. But we are to be at peace as believers in God. We are to be at peace knowing God sees all, God knows all, and God will handle all. In other words, it comes back down to God. Trusting in God, trusting in his sovereignty, because God has got this. I know folks that get distracted over a lot of things, and they get bent out of shape over even more things. But they're opening that letter that in the end won't matter. It will not matter, because we'll be face to face with God. Will we have an absolute devotion to God, or will we focus on things that in the end will not matter? If anyone this morning is struggling with your devotion to God, or if you have not devoted yourself to God and you want to start that process through baptism, in the water grave of baptism, and your belief and faith in Jesus, the Son of God, sent to redeem us, to reconcile us back to God, why don't you come on down right now as we sing the song of encouragement.